Good morning, everyone. This is Sumitra, and I would like to introduce the speaker for today, Dr. Sridev Mohapatra. Talking about educational qualifications, Sir has done his BSc in the year 1999 in botany from Sambalpur University, Odisha. MSc in the year 2001 in botany from Utkal University, Odisha. He has obtained his PhD in plant biology from University of New Hampshire, USA in the year 2008. Dr. Mohapatra has vast work experience, which includes where he's worked as postdoctoral research associate in University of Texas in Arlington, USA from July 2008 to August 2010, postdoctoral research associate at Texas Tech University, USA, from September 2010 to July 2011. Worked as assistant professor in Amity University, Lucknow, from July 2011 to February 2012, and is currently working as assistant professor at BITS Pilani, Hyderabad campus from March 2012 till now. Well, Sir has many publications to his credit, in total of about 12 publications, and he's received huge amounts of funds for carrying out research. Prominent one includes 45 lakhs from DBT, and this is the current project that's going on, and this is on conditional pathogenesis, understanding why potentially beneficial rhizobacteria turn pathogenic under certain environmental conditions. The next project was for an amount of 25 lakhs from DST, which Sir has completed, and this was on delineating the impact of plant growth, promoting rhizobacteria on plant polyamine metabolism, novel insights into plant PGPR interactions. Another project that Sir has completed was for an amount of 13.7 lakhs, and the funding agency was BITS Pilani, and the work was on elucidating signaling mechanisms in plant responses to drought stress mitigation by beneficial soil bacteria. And these are the few projects which Sir has worked, and Sir has received many awards to its credit as well. Well, the list goes on, and firstly, I'd like to thank Sir for accepting our invitation and to begin the session. Thank you, Sir.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, ma'am, for the kind introduction. As ma'am already mentioned, my name is Sridev Mohapatra, and I work as an assistant professor in the Department of Biological Sciences, BITS Pilani, Hyderabad campus. And I am a plant biologist by training. I work on several aspects of plant biology, but my focus, the focal area of my research currently is on the interaction between plants and what are called beneficial soil bacteria or beneficial soil microbes. So broadly, it is plant microbe interaction for plant benefit. And hence, the topic of my presentation today is a tale of friendship between beneficial soil bacteria and plants, great potential for the future of agriculture. So plants, as you know, interact with a wide variety of biotic and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are all the living organisms, the living beings that plants interact with, and abiotic factors are all the non-living interactions that plants make. So For example, human beings are biotic factors. Birds are biotic factors. Other animals are biotic factors. Insects are biotic factors. Microbes, fungi, bacteria, these are all biotic factors. And abiotic factors are all the atmospheric conditions that plants have to deal with. For example, temperature is an abiotic factor. Water is an abiotic factor. Wind is an abiotic factor. Humidity is an abiotic factor, and so on and so forth. Right. So plants interact with biotic as well as abiotic factors. Now, what I'm showing you here is different kinds of plants. Whether plants are these small grasses or crop plants or trees, they all interact with biotic and abiotic factors throughout their lifetime. Now, plants, as you know, grow in soil. So plants have roots which extend into the soil, which provide them with anchorage. And plants have shoots which come out of the soil and which interact with the aerial factors, the aerial environmental factors like light, like temperature, etc. Now, soil is a heterogeneous mix, and soil consists of a lot of different types of materials. Soil has water, soil has mineral ions or salts, soil has oxygen, soil has microorganisms. So we are going to be focusing on these soil microorganisms, and more specifically soil bacteria today. The region of roots which interacts directly with the soil, or the part of root system which has soil adhering to it, that zone is known as the rhizosphere. So rhizosphere consists of the zone of soil which adheres to the roots or interacts with the root. And these bacteria that I have mentioned 2 or 3 times are called rhizospheric bacteria, and they live in the rhizosphere. Now, when we say bacteria, you are inclined to think of bad bacteria, of pathogens, right? So much like animals, plants also interact with both good as well as bad bacteria. Like we have infection causing bacteria, bad bacteria, disease causing bacteria, the bad bacteria, but we also have the what I call the tummy buddies, the bacteria that live in the gut, the intestinal bacteria, which are good bacteria. Like that, plants also interact with both good and bad bacteria. Typically, the infectious pathogenic bacteria in plants, they live on the phyllosphere. Phyllosphere means the surface of the leaf. While on the rhizosphere is a heterogeneous mix of both good and bad bacteria, but a large population of that rhizospheric bacteria are those good bacteria or beneficial microbes or beneficial bacteria. So these rhizospheric bacteria are also called plant growth promoting rhizobacteria because they help in plant growth promotion. And they are abbreviated as PGPR, plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, PGPR. So I will be calling them PGPR from now on. These bacteria can be symbiotic. They can live in very close association with the plants. That is, they can either be endosymbionts or they can be exosymbionts, or they can be free living. Free living means they live in the soil adhering to the roots, so they live in the rhizosphere and they are not classically symbiotic. That means a symbiotic organism can only survive if it lives in the vicinity of its symbiotic partner. These bacteria are free living. They can live without the plants, and the plants can also live without them. But when they come together, they form a very close beneficial interaction. And they help plants in normal growth as well as stress mitigation. So please, I want to emphasize, please pay attention to this term stress mitigation, because my research is particularly the use of plant growth promoting rhizobacteria on abiotic stress mitigation in plants. So I will be talking about plant growth promoting rhizobacteria and abiotic stress mitigation in plants. They include genera such as Pseudomonas, Rhizobium, Mesorhizobium, Bradyrhizobium, Azorhizobium, Azotobacter, Azospirillum, Klebsiella, Bacillus, etc. So these plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, they live in the vicinity of the roots and they are attracted to the roots through root exudates. I'm going to show you a little animation here, which was made by an ME student of mine, a former ME student of mine called Anshika Gupta. She made this animation, so I'm going to show you a little bit of this. How exactly the interaction, how exactly do these bacteria interact with the roots, and how does this all initiate? So you can see here the roots exudating out some chemicals, and these exudates, these chemical exudates, they attract both good as well as bad bacteria. So the pathogenic bacteria is shown in orange and black, and the good bacteria are shown in yellow. And the good bacteria, they help the plants in myriad ways, like I told you. One of the things that they do is they help in killing the bad bacteria. They help in controlling the bad bacteria. And so one of the first things that these good bacteria do is they act as biocontrol agents. And you can relate very well to this because this is the same thing that happens in our gut. In our gut, the gut microbiota consists of good bacteria which can provide resistance against pathogenic bacteria, which can help the body in fighting against pathogenic bacteria. And so this is one of the things that these good bacteria do, these beneficial bacteria do, these PGPR do, but they also function in a variety of other ways, and I'm going to mostly discuss about these other ways in which these bacteria function. So they help in plant growth promotion and thus forming a beneficial interaction with the plants. Now, when PGPR come in contact with the plant roots, obviously these PGPR are secreting some chemicals into the soil, which the plants are taking up or getting benefited from. Similarly, the plants are also secreting some chemicals into the soil, which the bacteria are taking up, the bacteria are getting attracted to, etc. So PGPR are known to produce a wide variety of material, a wide variety of molecules which they exude into the soil, which they release into the soil. For example, these PGPR produce what are known as exopolysaccharides. Exopolysaccharides are macromolecules which are a combination of mostly proteins and carbohydrates, and these macromolecules, they help the bacteria in adhering to the roots, they help the bacteria in water conservation, etc. These are exopolysaccharides, so they form like a layer around the bacterial colony. It's like a biofilm, or it helps in the production of biofilm, but we don't want to get into biofilm here. These bacteria also release other chemicals such as ACC deaminase. It's an enzyme which helps in regulating ethylene levels in plants. Now, ethylene is a hormone which plants secrete during stress, and sometimes it becomes important for plants to keep ethylene levels in check. So ACC deaminase, in a complicated mechanism or by a complicated mechanism, which I'm not going to describe here because we don't have the time for it, helps in regulating ethylene levels inside the plants. Similarly, these bacteria help in phosphate solubilization. Now, plant roots, as you know, take in nutrients from the soil. They take in water, they take in nutrients. One of the nutrients that is very important to the plant, which the roots must take up, absorb, is phosphate. But phosphate mostly exists in the soil as insoluble phosphate. So these bacteria release some enzymes such as phosphatases, which help in phosphate solubilization and subsequent uptake of phosphate by the plants. They also release antibiotics which help in biocontrol, like I just described a little while ago. They produce siderophores which help in ion acquisition, like phosphate solubilization helps in phosphate acquisition. Siderophores are molecules which help in ion acquisition. Anyway, again, we are not going to go into the details of this, but that's what it is. Plant hormones, bacteria secrete hormones. Bacteria and plants use the same hormones, the same auxin, cytokinin, ABA, etc., which is used by plants, are also used by bacteria. Bacteria make the same hormones, they release these hormones into the soil, and these hormones can help plants in very many processes. And these bacteria, some of these bacteria are also known to secrete some volatile chemicals which can diffuse into the plant. So PGPR produce a lot of different molecule substances which they release into the soil and which can be subsequently taken up by the plants and help the plants. And like I said, the plants also release certain chemicals into the soil. For example, plants release amino acids which are taken up by PGPR, and then they convert those amino acids into hormones and release the hormones back into the soil. Plants make ACC, amino, well, I'm forgetting the name, full name, I think it's called aminocyclopropane. It is a precursor of ethylene, and this ACC is secreted out by the plants and is degraded by ACC deaminase so that ethylene is not produced, because ACC is a precursor of ethylene. So the thing is, what do I do with PGPR? You may ask, what do I do with PGPR? What is my interest in PGPR? Like I've told you before, I focus mostly on stress amelioration, abiotic stress tolerance or abiotic stress amelioration in plants. So I am working on in the area of plant stress and how do these bacteria help the plants in overcoming certain stresses. So the question is, what is stress then? Stress is nothing but an adverse environmental condition which leads to an interference in normal physiological functioning of plants. Now you all know that plants need certain environmental conditions in the optimum amounts, in the optimum quantities to grow. Plants need water, plants need the right temperature, plants need the correct humidity, plants need the correct wind velocity, plants need light, plants need periodic dark, etc. So if any of these is not present in optimal amounts, if it is present in excess or in lower amounts than usual, then plants undergo stress. So what I am focusing on mostly is drought stress or dehydration stress, which means a condition where soil water depletes. There is depletion of soil water and plants don't have access to enough soil water, and therefore how these PGPR help the plants in overcoming these kind of abiotic stresses or drought stress or dehydration stress forms the focus of my research. So plants experience different environmental stresses. There is drought, there is freezing and chilling, there is salinity, heavy metals, excessive water, and biotic stresses. I will be focusing mostly on the abiotic stresses, particularly on drought and on how PGPR help plants in overcoming. Now, why is it important for us to do research on plant stress and how plants overcome stress? Because plants are sessile. Sessile means plants cannot run away from their stresses. You and I can run away from their stresses, right? So when Tom is chasing Jerry, then Jerry can run away from Tom. But plants cannot run away from their stressors, and therefore plants must learn to coexist with their stressors. So one of the mechanisms which nature has imparted, one of the gifts which nature has imparted to plants are these, is this group of soil bacteria called PGPR, which help plants in coexisting with their stressors, with their adverse environmental conditions. So as I said, my research is mostly focused on drought stress, which is also called osmotic stress. Drought is a condition in which soil water either depletes or there is enough soil water, but the plant is not able to take up soil water. Now you know that plants take up water from the soil through root hairs, okay, and the root hairs transmit the water to the roots, and the roots to the shoot through the vascular system, shoot to the leaves, and so on and so forth. Now what happens when plants encounter low water in the roots, or for whatever reasons there is enough water in the soil but the roots are not able to take up that water. So if the roots encounter low soil water or are unable to take up water, that sets a signal to the plants to respond to this dehydrating condition. Plants have an inbuilt mechanism, like us, like animals. Plants also have an inbuilt mechanism to cope up with these stresses. So there are some signals sent to the plant, and the plant responds accordingly so that it can withstand, it can tolerate these stresses, it can offer some degree of resistance towards these stresses and can still grow. Now, beyond a certain point, of course, the plant gives up. But up until that certain point, the plant has learned to fight. So what does the plant do? So for example, as soon as the roots encounter drought-like conditions, it sends a signal to the rest of the plants to accumulate ABA, abscisic acid, which is an important plant hormone, which leads to the closure of stomata. You know stomata. Stomata are microscopic openings on leaves which help in evaporation of water. When stomata close, stomatal aperture close, transpiration or evaporation of water is minimized and plants are able to conserve water. That is one of the mechanisms. Similarly, there are other mechanisms. For example, apart from stomatal closure, plants also have known to accumulate compatible osmolytes like proline, sorbitol, sugar alcohols, glycine, betaine, polyamines, etc., which help the plants in conserving water, because these compatible osmolytes accumulate inside the cells and they help in retaining water. They prevent water from exosmosizing or leaving the cells through exosmosis. They temporarily decrease the water potential of plant cells so that cells don't lose any more water, rather they take up more water from their surroundings. There are changes in root structure architecture so that the root grows in a direction where it can find water and can absorb more water. Changes happen to the structure of the primary root as well as the branch roots in case of taproot system, and to all the adventitious roots in case of adventitious root system. So there is enhanced water uptake. There is changes in the hormonal status, the status of the homeostasis of phytohormones in plants. There is overall change in carbon-nitrogen balance. So I am going to be focusing, my research focuses on this bullet number 2, compatible osmolytes, and this second last bullet, changes in phytohormones homeostasis. So I'm going to be talking about how PGPR help plants in coping up with drought stress by modulating the accumulation of compatible osmolytes and by modulating phytohormone metabolism, thereby overall changing the carbon-nitrogen balance in plants. So how PGPR help plants in mitigating drought? So now a lot of groups around the world are working on plant PGPR interaction, but mostly these groups are focusing on the physiological roles of PGPR. They are focusing also mostly on crop species and on applications. But I am more interested in answering questions which are more basic questions, such as what is the molecular basis of plant PGPR interaction for abiotic stress tolerance? What are the intricate mechanisms which need to be unearthed? The mechanisms which help these PGPR, or mechanisms which promote such kind of beneficial interaction, or these mechanisms which make PGPR in helping plants to overcome drought. And ultimately ask the question, how can the application of PGPR be a popular and sustainable alternative to conventional breeding and transgenic technology to help plants in overcoming drought stress? So I will tell you now a little story about where I began in BITS, what I did thereafter, and where I am now. So when I began in BITS, when I began my research in BITS about 7 years ago, I wanted to work on, because my background was in PGPR and plant stress tolerance. So I wanted to combine them both, and I wanted to work on delineating the impact of plant growth promoting rhizobacteria on plant stress tolerance. So I chose certain strains of PGPR which was available at that time through my collaborators. Now, I'm not a microbiologist, so for me to isolate and work on soil microbes would have taken longer. So what I did was I was lucky enough to be able to collaborate, find some collaborators, and I found a wonderful collaborator in Dr. Meenakshi Grover, who used to work at that time in CRIDA, Central Research Institute for Dryland Agriculture, which is in Santosh Nagar here in Hyderabad. And I brought some, she had isolated some strains because she's also a PGPR worker, but she mostly works on the microbial side. So she had isolated some strains and she had published some strains, one of which was Pseudomonas putida GAP P45. GAP P45 is the name of the strain. I wanted to bring this strain from her and I wanted to try it on my model plant, which is Arabidopsis thaliana. Arabidopsis thaliana is a model plant which is used to ask questions about the mechanisms in plant biology. So A. thaliana is a wonderful system to study mechanisms of different aspects of plant biology. So I wanted to bring the Pseudomonas putida from her. I wanted to apply to Arabidopsis thaliana roots in my lab, grow them under laboratory conditions. Under water deficit stress, I wanted to take off water from the soil so they are overcoming water deficit stress. I wanted to first see if that is having any impact on the growth of Arabidopsis, if it is helping Arabidopsis in overcoming drought or not. And if it did, then I wanted to see what was the specific impact of this bacteria on the proline metabolism of Arabidopsis, polyamine metabolism in Arabidopsis, and phytohormone metabolism in Arabidopsis under water deficit conditions. I also wanted to study the impact of another strain, which again I procured from Dr. Meenakshi Grover in CRIDA, which is called Pseudomonas putida AKMP7. AKMP7 is a very unusual bacteria, and I will discuss a little more about this bacteria later. So I started my work with these two strains, and now of course we have moved on to several other strains, and we have also moved on to other plants like rice, but this is where I started from, and majority of my work in BITS was from these two strains and Arabidopsis, so I'm going to be discussing that work here. So I will first start with my first project, which was impact of P. putida GAP P45 on physiological status and proline metabolism of Arabidopsis thaliana under drought. This work was carried out by my PhD student Daipan Ghosh, who has graduated now. He graduated last year, so he's now Dr. Daipan Ghosh, and he's doing postdoc elsewhere. So Daipan started working on this project, and his project was pretty simple. What he wanted to do was, he was interested in looking at how this P. putida GAP P45 is impacting the metabolism of this important compatible osmolyte called proline in Arabidopsis thaliana. So as I told you, plants accumulate compatible osmolytes under drought conditions, and that helps them in preventing water loss. Proline is one such important compatible osmolyte. Proline is an amino acid, as you know. It's an amino acid. It's an aliphatic amino acid with an amino group. Proline is synthesized in a multi-step process from other amino acids, such as glutamate produces proline using a variety of enzymes. Like there's one enzyme here called pyrroline 5-carboxylate synthase. This is an enzyme which helps in proline biosynthesis. Pyrroline 5-carboxylate reductase also helps in proline biosynthesis. Similarly, ornithine aminotransferase converts ornithine into proline. Okay, ornithine aminotransferase converts ornithine into proline. So like that, proline is manufactured in a multiple step process by predominantly these three enzymes, P5CS, P5CR, and OAT. And proline is broken down or catabolized back into glutamate or into ornithine by these two other enzymes. One is called proline dehydrogenase and the other is called P5C dehydrogenase. So these are 5 enzymes which are key to proline metabolism. So we wanted to study the impact of P. putida GAP P45 on the regulation of these enzymes, these three biosynthetic enzymes and two catabolic enzymes of proline under drought conditions. So we not only wanted to study the enzyme activity, the regulation of enzyme activity, we also wanted to study the regulation of these genes, the expression, the regulation of the expression of these genes. So our research was broken down into, Daipan's research was broken down into two components to study the gene regulation, regulation of gene expression of these 5 genes which produce these enzymes, and also to study the regulation at the enzymatic level when Arabidopsis thaliana roots are treated with GAP-P45 under drought conditions. The second project was on the impact of P. putida GAP-P45 on polyamine metabolism. Polyamines are also important osmolytes which aggregate in plants during stress conditions. Now, polyamines are not classically termed as compatible osmolytes, but they help in plant stress tolerance in myriad ways. Polyamines are aliphatic amines. Like proline is an amino acid, polyamine is not an amino acid. These are aliphatic amines. Sunetra Sen was my other PhD student along with Daipan Ghosh. Sunetra Sen was my other PhD student. They sort of co-joined my lab together, and she was the one responsible for carrying out this project on polyamines. Now, there are 3 major polyamines which we studied: putrescine, spermidine, and spermine, as you can see here. And these also have amino acid origins. Like, for example, ornithine helps in putrescine biosynthesis. Putrescine then fluxes into spermidine. Spermidine produces spermine, and their catabolic products were also studied. And somehow this is also linked to the metabolism of amino acids. So I'm going to describe these 2 projects in a little bit of details. But before that, what we did was we wanted to study if this bacterium, this P. putida GAP-P45, has any impact on stress tolerance in Arabidopsis or not. Because Meenakshi Grover, Dr. Meenakshi Grover and her team had studied the impact of GAP-P45 on other crop species. We wanted to study their impact on Arabidopsis, because in order to ask these basic questions and to answer these basic questions, we had to first get them tested on Arabidopsis and see whether they are having any morphogenetic impact on Arabidopsis or not. So what we did was, we had these 4 setups. We grew plants. These are soil-free plants grown on MS medium. We grew plants and gave them 4 different types of treatments. One was the no treatment controls, non-stressed plus non-inoculated. Next one was non-stressed but inoculated with GAP-P45. Third one was water stressed, means drought, and non-inoculated. And the fourth one was water stressed plus inoculated. So while the non-stressed plus non-inoculated and the non-stressed plus inoculated, as the days progress, day 0, day 2, day 4, day 7, as the days progress, you don't see much difference in their growth. But as you can see, sorry, excuse me, as you can see, the water stress plus non-inoculated begin to dry up very fast between day 0 and day 7 post treatments. They start drying up. However, the water stress plants that were inoculated with PGPR, with GAP-P45, they show relatively less drying. So if you compare this panel with this panel, the WS plus NI with WS plus I, you see that as the days progress, the inoculated plants under water stress don't look as much stressed as the water stress plus non-inoculated plants. So this encouraged us, this told us that yes, this bacterium is having a positive impact on Arabidopsis, because you never know which strain will work on which plant. Just because one strain is effective on rice doesn't mean it will be effective on Arabidopsis. So we then proceeded for our other experiments. We did some root structure analysis, and as you can see here, this is the top panel is a root structure, root length, primary root length data. And as you can see here, on day 0, all 4 treatments showed equal root length. Day 0 means before transferring them to before transferring, before giving them the treatment here is drought plus the bacterium. And because these are, like I told you, these are soil free plants, these are grown in MS medium, so drought is induced by adding peg to the medium, polyethylene glycol creates drought like conditions by preventing water uptake. It dries up the medium, so plants cannot uptake water. So before transferring to PEG supplemented MS medium, and before inoculating it with CAP-P45, as you can see, all four treatments, the blue, the red, the green, and the yellow, all four treatments show equal root length. So the blue is NS plus NI, no stress and no non-inoculated. Red is non-stressed but inoculated. Green is water stressed and non-inoculated, and yellow or orange is water stress plus inoculated. But as the days progress, you can see that the primary root length increases only in the green bar. Green bar is water stressed plus non-inoculated. Now what happens, this is a very classical response of Arabidopsis to water stress, is that if Arabidopsis encounters water stress, its primary root grows in length so as to be able to absorb more water, right? And this is a very short-term drought responsiveness of Arabidopsis. And since we are doing short-term only, day 2, day 4, day 7, these are short-term experiments, and this is extreme drought because we grew the plants in 25% PEG 6000 supplemented medium. So extreme drought, this is a very classical phenotype of the root. But you see these orange bars which are water stressed but inoculated, there the root length did not grow as much, and the root length is very close to these controls. The controls means the well-watered plants, the well-watered inoculated or non-inoculated plants, right? So the root length, primary root length resembles that of the control plants under drought stress. So under drought stress conditions, the root architecture resembles that of the control plants and not of the drought plants. And this is the picture, a picture of the same data which I have shown you here. We moved on to do more experiments, and I want you here to only mostly focus on the green and the orange. The green and the orange are important. These two are controls anyways. Green is water stressed, non-inoculated. Orange is water stressed, inoculated. And as you see, in every parameter that we tested, fresh weight, dry weight, plant water content, everywhere the orange bars are closer to the controls. So for example, in fresh weight, the orange bars are more, they have more, the inoculated plants under drought stress have more fresh weight than the non-inoculated plants under drought stress. So this is a quantitative measurement of the beneficial impact of this particular PGPR on plant growth. Similarly, we did chlorophyll content and we found similar results. We also did total proline content, and we found that under drought conditions, which is the green bars, the proline content is obviously higher than the well-watered plants. Under PGPR treated conditions, the proline content is initially lower than the drought conditions, but slowly by day 7, they catch up with the proline content of the water stressed plants. And we were interested in digging deeper into this aspect, and therefore we did a gene expression analysis of the 5 genes that I've mentioned before and enzymatic assays. So when we did gene expression analysis, this is showing you day 2, day 4 and day 7 after treatments, after moving the plants to PEG medium and after inoculating them with PGPR. And so these are the 3 biosynthetic genes, OAT, P5CS and P5CR, and these are the 2 catabolic genes which I have already discussed previously. So as you can see here, let's first take the example of OAT. OAT, as you see, by day 2, under drought, the OAT expression is very high. Then again, drought plus PGPR, it falls down to near control levels. Same thing you can see in P5CS1 and P5CR. On day 4, what you see is that the OAT expression starts increasing in the OAT, P5CS1 and P5CR, all three genes, the expression starts increasing in the drought plus PGPR treated plants or the orange bars, and by day 7 they completely surpass the expression of the drought treated plants. Maybe that is why we are seeing this kind of a gradual increment in the accumulation of proline in the drought plus PGPR treated plants. But we saw the exact same phenomenon in the uh, catabolic genes also. So while the biosynthetic gene expression increased and surpassed that of the drought treated plants, same thing happened to the catabolic gene expression also. So which made us hypothesize that under PGPR treated conditions, when Arabidopsis is treated with treated with GAP-P45 under drought conditions, the proline metabolism is not only modulated so as to accumulate proline, but also aids in enhanced catabolism of proline. So it is increasing the proline turnover overall. That is why the expression of the biosynthetic genes is also increasing and the catabolic genes is also increasing. While under drought, if you see the green bars, only the expression of the catabolic genes is higher than the controls, right? But the expression of the biosynthetic genes are higher than the controls, but the expression of the catabolic genes are much lower than the controls. But in the drought plus PGPR treated plants, the expression of both the biosynthetic and the catabolic genes are high, which tells us that GAP-P45 not only increases proline accumulation, but overall proline homeostasis, proline turnover in Arabidopsis thaliana under drought conditions. And this makes sense because if it were only accumulating proline, and not increasing proline turnover, then maybe the plants will not look like this, because then high amounts of proline can become toxic to the plants, and therefore it is helping in overall proline homeostasis so that the plants are sustained. They are able to withstand drought for a considerably longer period of time. So we followed this up with proline metabolic enzymes. The same genes, the same gene expression studies that we had done here through RT-PCR. We did the enzymatic studies through biochemical means, and we found that the same enzymes, the enzyme activities follow the same pattern as the gene expression. Okay, so whether it is P5CS, P5CR or OAT, they follow the same pattern as the gene expression. So we concluded that PGPR mediated drought tolerance leads to high proline turnover, and there is transcriptional regulation of proline metabolism, and therefore after transcription the enzyme activity is not changing. The enzyme activity correlates positively with the transcription data. We published this work in Annals of Microbiology. The second project that I have mentioned before is on the impact of P. putida GAP-P45 on polyamine metabolism, and as I told you, this was being handled by Sunetra Sen. She has also graduated, like Daipen. They both joined together. They both graduated together, and Sunetra is also now Dr. Sunetra Sen. She is working for a publishing house. She took up an industry job because she didn't want to continue in the academia, so she took up an industry job and she's doing pretty well there. So these are the three polyamines that I was talking to you about: putrescine, spermidine and spermine. And we did the exact same thing that we had done in proline metabolism. We analyzed all these different genes. These different genes in polyamine metabolism, we analyzed their expression. So ADC, for example, converts arginine into putrescine. ODC converts ornithine into putrescine. Now ODC is absent in Arabidopsis, so we didn't do ODC. Arginine convert ADC, arginine decarboxylase, converts arginine into putrescine, and putrescine is then subsequently converted to spermidine and spermine by the enzymes spermidine synthase and spermine synthase, and the aminopropyl moieties for these conversions are provided by decarboxylated S-adenosyl methionine through an enzyme called SAMDC, or S-adenosyl methionine decarboxylase. So we'll not get into the intricate details of this. Just remember that polyamines are aliphatic amines, and therefore they have aliphatic groups like CH3, CH2, 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 NH2, like that. They have alkyl moiety and they have amine moiety, amine group, and this is the pathway in which they are synthesized from ornithine or arginine, and they are broken down into different metabolites. For example, putrescine is broken down into GABA through diamine oxidase, but it is also fluxed into spermidine and spermidine and spermine can be back converted into putrescine using these enzymes called PAO, polyamine oxidases. So again, 5-6 enzymes in biosynthesis and 2 major enzymes in catabolism. However, there is one complication here. All these enzymes have different isoforms. So we had to analyze all the different isoforms of these enzymes, both at the transcription level as well as at the or at the gene expression level as well as at the enzyme assay level. So I'm showing you polyamine metabolic gene expression data here. I will not spend much time here. This is the gene expression data. Like we had seen the gene expression data for proline genes. These are all polyamine biosynthetic genes, ADC, AIH, CPA. These are all polyamine biosynthetic genes. And as you can see here also, what you see is between the green and the orange is always higher. That means that this PGPR is increasing the biosynthesis of most of these polyamines. Okay, so I will not discuss the intricacies of all these different genes, but we analyzed expression of all these genes, ADC1, ADC2, SPDS1, SPDS2, AIH and CPA through different days, day 2, day 4 and day 7 post-treatment. And also one more gene called spermine synthase, spermidine synthase, spermine synthase, all that we did. Okay. So eventually we found that polyamine gene expression is increasing. Expression of polyamine biosynthetic genes is increasing under drought stress when inoculated with GAP-P45. And then when we analyzed the polyamine levels, we found that for the most part, the polyamine levels were also high as compared to drought stress. Polyamine levels in drought plus inoculated plants were higher as compared to the drought stress. Spermine, we didn't see any change, but putrescine and spermidine were higher. So our conclusions thus far from this study is that there is PGPR mediated enhanced gene expression and accumulation of putrescine and spermidine under drought. Different genes of polyamine biosynthesis regulated differently under drought and PGPR treatments. We went ahead and published this data as well in Plant Physiology and Biochemistry. We have other projects going on with P. putida GAP-P45. I will just give you a little overview of these projects. One of the projects is on impact of P. putida GAP-P45 on plant redox status in Arabidopsis under drought conditions and in endogenous phytohormone homeostasis, as I have mentioned before. So, you know that plants undergo oxidative stress and all kinds of abiotic stresses and biotic stresses also induce oxidative stresses in plants. Now, plants, in order to maintain a healthy life, have to balance their redox conditions. They have to balance the redox conditions. They have to keep the levels of ROS to a minimum, reactive oxygen species to a minimum, such as oxygen radicals, such as superoxide, such as hydrogen peroxide, etc. Because in low quantities, these reactive oxygen species act as signaling molecules, but in high quantities, they become detrimental to the plants. They become stressors, right? So plants have to regulate the levels of these reactive oxygen species. And how do they control these reactive oxygen species? Through enzymes, through antioxidant enzymes, right? So what we found in a nutshell, I will not go into bore you with again the gory details of this research, but what we found is that this particular strain, P. putida GAP-P45 in Arabidopsis under drought conditions, it modulated the levels of these reactive oxygen species. For example, see, it has decreased the level of superoxide radical. It has also decreased the level of hydrogen peroxide, etc. Okay, but we found that now if the levels of reactive oxygen species are low, then you would assume that two things may be happening. Either the reactive oxygen species are being produced in low quantities, or they are being scavenged in high quantities by reactive oxygen species scavenging enzymes. Now, we didn't find any major change in the enzymatic activities, but if at all we found that the enzymatic activities are low. For example, this is superoxide dismutase. The top panel is units per gram fresh weight, and the lower panel is the specific activity, which is unit per milligram protein. In either way, in either panel, if you compare the green with the orange, which is the drought, with the drought plus PGPR, you will find that, see, the controls are pretty much the same. The well watered and well watered plus PGPR enzyme activity are the same. But if you control the drought and drought plus PGPR, you find that the level of the activity of SOD is low, right? So, and the same thing we found for other enzymes also, like peroxidase, like catalase. We found their enzyme, their activities to be low. So we concluded that there is low production of ROS, and there is therefore low scavenging of ROS in PGPR treated plants under drought conditions. So it is not allowing the plant to make high ROS, which is happening probably in case of drought. And so therefore, when we analyzed a multitude of other enzymes, other reactive ROS scavenging enzymes like GR, like APX, ascorbate peroxidase, this is glutathione reductase, etc. We found that we concluded that these bacteria are somehow keeping both ROS levels, absolute levels of ROS low, and therefore high scavenging is probably not required, and therefore the activities of scavenging enzymes are also low. So Daipen and Sunetra combined these two work together. Daipen's the gene expression work was published, but his enzyme activity work was not published with the gene expression paper. So we combined that with Sunetra's ROS data, and we published that also later. Okay, so I'm approaching about the end of my talk, and the other project that we have worked on is the impact of PGPR on phytohormone, modulation of phytohormones under drought conditions in plants. And like I have told you, PGPR secrete phytohormones. This is just a little cartoon which describes that PGPR can secrete different types of phytohormones which can be taken up by the plants, and eventually that can impact the phytohormone levels inside the plants and phytohormone metabolism in the plants. Okay, so don't go into the details of this. This is just a cartoon taken from Yang et al. 2009. So what we did was we inoculated Arabidopsis with GAP-P45 and subjected it to PEG, which induced drought conditions like I told you before. And first thing we did is we analyzed the levels of the content of different phytohormones. Now we focused on 4 different phytohormones. These 4 different phytohormones were abscisic acid, which is the as you know, it helps in stomatal closure. So it is a stress hormone. It helps plants in overcoming drought stress. We also focused on the major growth hormone, which is IAA or auxin, and we focused on two other hormones, cytokinin and gibberellins. So these are all growth hormones and stress hormones. So what we did was we analyzed the content of these phytohormones in roots and shoots under different conditions, under well-watered conditions, well-watered plus PGPR, or non-stressed plus PGPR. So this is non-stressed. Also, we also call it non-treated, non-stressed plus inoculated, water stressed plus non-inoculated, and water stressed plus inoculated. Under these 4 conditions, we tested the quantities of phytohormones on different days of analysis, day 2, day 4, day 7, to see how they are fluctuating. And we did this we quantified using HPLC and LCMS. And we found very interesting results. For example, I will give you an example here of ABA. So in ABAC, we find that between non-stressed and inoculated, you don't see any change. Now, expectedly, under drought stress condition, the ABA content suddenly increases because the plants have to close their stomata. But when you treat with PGPR, since the plants are not facing that much stress, that therefore it is not in a hurry, in a rush to increase its ABA level. So the ABA content is lower in the blue bars than in the red bars. And we found the same in both roots as well as shoots. Now, IA content was a different story. IA content increased. See, the blue bars are higher than the red bars, both in the shoot and the root. They increased in the drought plus PGPR treated plants. Now, what this means, we will discuss later, that what this means is very complicated, but they did increase. Similarly, cytokinin levels, zeatin is an example of a cytokinin. Cytokinin levels also increased in the roots and the shoots following PGPR treatment under drought conditions. Just focus on the red and the blue because the controls, as we have seen all along, don't change much. There is like minimum change sometimes, but overall they stay fairly same. The greens and the whatever this other color is. Gibberellic acid content also increases on treating with PGPR under drought conditions. However, it increases only in the shoot and it decreases in the root. So this is a very complicated web of what is going on here, why some hormones are increasing, some are decreasing, some are increasing in the roots, some are increasing both in the roots and shoots, etc., so on and so forth. So that is complicated. We went ahead when we have published this also not very long ago, but there is much more to be done in this project, and this work has to be there has to be more, there is more to be done in this regard, in this aspect, to be able to find out exactly why this kind of unique modulations are being observed. Now I want to talk about this is the last project that I'm going to be talking about very briefly on a very different kind of story. Now, while we were chasing this GAPP45 story, we were also simultaneously working on another strain called P. putida, Pseudomonas putida, AKMP7. This strain was also procured, was also obtained from CRIDA, from Meenakshi Grover's lab. This is a thermotolerant strain. They didn't test it on drought, they tested it on heat, and it provides heat tolerance to wheat. We said, ma'am, give us the strain, we will test it on Arabidopsis and we will see if it provides any drought tolerance or not. Now, what we did was we procured this strain, and this work was started in our lab by two of my ME students, Diti Shah and Shalini Akula. Shalini was the first ME student to join me. She's now a faculty member. She's an assistant professor in CBIT, and I'm extremely proud of her. She's one also. She's in the same department which is organizing this conference, so she's in the she's one of the organizers. Shalini started this AKMP7 work in my lab, which was further carried forward by Diti Shah, who was my next ME student after Shalini. Both of them were doing thesis with me, and they were helped in this project by Daipen Ghosh, who had done the proline work. So what we found is that unlike GAP P45, if you compare the drought and drought plus AKMP7, you see that AKMP7 is progressively deteriorating the plant health under drought. So this is well watered. This work was mostly done in soil, well watered plus AKMP7, drought and drought plus AKMP7. And as the days progressed, day 0, day 9, day 12, day 16, day 18, following PGPR treatment and water withholding or drought treatment, you see that AKMP7 is progressively deteriorating the health of the plant. So this, we chase this story further. I will not give you the gory details of this story. We found some interesting mechanisms leading to a condition which we call conditional pathogenesis. Conditional pathogenesis means this is a strange type of PGPR which is useful for on some species but becomes pathogenic on other species. And we are chasing this story also now there are other students who are working on this particular bacterium. And I got a DBT project recently to work on AKMP7. And these are the two students who are currently working on AKMP7. This is Raj Gopalan, who is a PhD student, and Jaggoseni Burman, who is a ME student in my lab. There are other projects going on in the lab. For example, we wanted to characterize other water stress tolerance PGPR, and that work was done by another ME student, Anshika Gupta, who did this work along with Daipen, and we were able to also publish a paper on these other strains in the lab and some studies on their interaction with Arabidopsis under water stress or drought conditions. I have two other PhD students who recently joined me, Nikhil Padmanabhan and Ronak Sharma, are continuing different aspects of all these different projects that I discussed with you. Some of, Nikhil, for example, is focusing. Nikhil has been doing more work on rice than on Arabidopsis. So we are slowly moving away from the model system to a crop system. And Ronak is currently helping in the AKMP7 project, but she also has other aspects of plant PGPR interaction that she's working on. So I have many active collaborators who I profusely always thank. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to come this far in my research in BITS. Dr. Meenakshi Grover, who I have mentioned several times during the course of this conversation, who's a principal scientist. Earlier, she was in CRIDA, Hyderabad. Now she is in Indian Agriculture Research Institute in Delhi. Dr. Amitabh Mohanty from DuPont Knowledge Center, which is a plant biotech company, an agri-biotech company. Professor Prabhat Nath Jha, who is the HOD of BITS Pilani Biological Sciences in Pilani campus, and my own colleagues in Hyderabad campus, Professor Vidya Rajesh, Professor K. Nagamohan, etc. So I form a good team, and I forgot to add here the most recent, but one of the most important collaborators, which is Dr. Girish Mohannath, who joined us recently, and and I have been working for the last couple of years together. He's another plant biologist in our department. I sincerely thank CBIT, of course, for giving me this opportunity to present my work. And I thank the leadership of BITS Pilani, my faculty colleagues, my PhD and ME students, the lab technicians, my collaborators, DST and DBT and BITS Pilani for all the money that they have given me to carry on my research. So thank you very much. And I will see you when this is...
Well, now it's time to thank Dr. Sridev Mohapatra, Assistant Professor, BITS Pilani, Hyderabad campus, for talking about a tale of friendship between beneficial soil, bacteria and plants, great potential for the future of agriculture. Thank you, sir, for sharing your profound knowledge on this particular topic. And it was a very good learning experience for me personally, and I hope the same with the audience as well. Thank you so much for accepting our invite and being a part of this 1 week webinar cum FDP series on current progress and future prospects of biotechnology. And we would like to have many such sessions in the future, sir. Thank you for sparing your valuable time. Thank you.